Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about green screens. I'm going to show you guys not only how to set up a green screen, some of the best practices in doing so, but I'm also going to show you guys how to light your green screen properly to where it still makes sense. And not only that, but then I'm going to walk you guys through OBS in the computer and how to actually set everything up so that everything looks great inside OBS and in your live stream. There tends to be two camps on Twitch. There's those that like having their background showing, and they kind of set up a display of different knickknacks or things that they're into, or different, figurines, different artwork, things like that. And then there's people like me where I would rather my viewers see as much of the gameplay as possible, and even a small rectangle taking up a bit of that screen real estate is too much for me. It also helps that I'm not really a collector of things and things like that, so I really don't like making that whole set type thing that you see. So green screens always worked best for me and the type of content I produce. With that said, when you set up a green screen, there's a lot of problems you can run into, and there's a lot of little things that you can do to make sure that it works quite well, especially when it comes to lighting. So let's go ahead and roll the intro and then jump into today's video. Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Once again, going through setting up a green screen, some of the best practices when it comes to using one for your live stream, as well as how to properly light it, and how to set it up properly in OBS Studio. This works for also Streamlabs or any other software you use for streaming. However, OBS Studio tends to be the most popular, and it's the one that personally I think most streamers should be using. Alright. With that said, if you guys find this video helpful, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. It helps me out tremendously. Also, if you're not subscribed and you like content like this, streaming self-help videos, streaming tips, tutorials, things like that, make sure you hit the red subscribe button below and ring the bell next to it to be notified when I post new videos. All right, with that out of the way, let me kind of go through what you need in order to use a green screen. Now, you can get away with using any of this stuff or none of this stuff besides the actual green screen. Although you can use a blue screen. However, this is kind of the minimum setup I've found that gives you really that still high quality look. So the first thing you need is a green screen. So you can see here, I got this one. In my situation, what I did, and again, you got to kind of tweak things to work for you. But what I did is I hung a cable line here between my walls that I can slide this green screen. I'm going to disappear for a second like this across. And then I got some clamps up here that I can clamp it to, and then you got my green screen. Now the actual best way to hang a green screen is not with something like this. However, it is actually using a stand. So the kit that I use, which I'll link down in the description below, the lights, the green screen, and the stands all came as a kit that I ordered off Amazon for about 150 bucks. It actually comes with two stands and then the bar that goes across the top. The reason that's the best way to set it up is when you pull out your green screen, you want to make sure you have it nice and taut so that any wrinkles or any type of creases in the fabric get pulled tight so that you have a nice flat surface that you're working with. That's going to give you the best results. That's why I use two clamps at the top of this cable to make sure that I can at least pull the top tight. Unfortunately, with a stand, you can also clamp along the sides, pull it out, stretch it out nice and taut, and then clamp that, and it works really well. With this setup, I can't do that. However, for ease of use, it actually worked better for me because I can now move it out of my way when I need to do other things in the room, like creating YouTube videos and stuff. So for me, it just worked better than having to set up and tear down stands every single time. But I will say again, the best option would be to use the stands that go around all the sides. All right, so that's your green screen that you're going to need. The second thing that you're going to need, really, most green screens, they require a 4-point light system. And the way that you do that is you see these soft boxes on each side of me. You would have two soft boxes that are lighting up your screen. So if I'm sitting here in this chair, for example, I would have two lights that are directly to my side that are actually shining back on the green screen. What that means is your green screen then has to be further back, which overall is a good idea to have. Because the further back the green screen is from your subject, the less the light bounces on the green screen and then reflects back on the subject, which is what causes a lot of that green silhouette around the subject that's hard to get out when you go to key a green screen in any software, in our case OBS Studio. Again, when you're working in a smaller set of space, you got to make some compromises. But again, the typical setup for the best quality is having two separate fill lights like these with softboxes that are lighting up your green screen, and then you would have two additional lights like I have here shining onto your subject to illuminate your subject. This also helps you get any shadows or anything off of your green screen. Now again, working in a small space, that just didn't work for me. So what I ended up doing is that I have these two lights shining on me. However, I replaced the default bulbs that came with them with brighter daylight bulbs, which is another point I want to make. When setting up a green screen, you want to make sure you're using daylight colored bulbs. The reason being is if you're using a tungsten color or a yellow color bulb, it'll actually change the color of your green screen a little bit and make it harder to actually key out in the programs. So you want to be using white light as best as you can. And like I said, what I did was I took the original kit that I got with the bulbs that they had in them and jacked up the brightness of those bulbs. So I believe they came with, let's just say, because those are CFL bulbs, so maybe they were 30 watt bulbs and I changed them to like 75 watt bulbs. So even though you might not be able to tell via this camera, these are actually pretty dang bright lights and actually light up stuff a lot. And the reason for that is because I have the green screen closer to me and because the space in my room is limited, this allows me to light myself up by having them pointed at my face on each side, but also be bright enough that light's bouncing from all over the room to light up the green screen so that I'm not also casting a shadow behind me on the green screen as much, which again, all of this is about making it as easy as possible to key out the green screen in the program that you're using, in our case OBS Studio. So that's how I've gotten away with using a two light setup. But I'm kind of lying a little bit because there's one other trick I did. So normally in a typical 3-light system, which is the typical light setup when you're recording, you also have what's called a backlight. You have your key light, your fill light, and then you have a backlight. So what I did is to also help keep shadows being cast from these lights hitting directly on me, is I actually hung this directly below a ceiling fan that I have on the ceiling here, in which I replaced the bulbs with 100 watt equivalent LED daylight bulbs. So again, that white light. So I have it going right under the 3 lights, and the 2 right here are both, over on this side towards me of the green screen, thus casting down light behind me, which helps separate me from the screen and also make sure there's no other shadows. So a great way you can do it with 2 light systems is if you use the light that you already have in your room and replace those bulbs with daylight bulbs as well. So I am kind of still running a 3-light setup even though we have 2. But it definitely beats the alternative, which is what most green screen tutorials will recommend, which is a 4-light setup. And as you'll see when we actually get into keying it, I think it works really, really well. The last thing I want to mention when it comes to a green screen, so that's the main things you need, is the green screen, the mounting mechanism for the green screen. Again, the best option would be the poles that come all the way across the top and then down to the floor. That way you can get it nice and taut. This works well, especially if most of the hanging flowy part is below you enough that those creases and stuff don't get noticed from the camera or the webcam. And 2 lights at least, possibly using your ceiling light or some type of light coming down over the top of the green light, filling out that space behind you with light. Okay, last thing though to mention before we jump in the computer is controlling your light is super important. This is a mistake I've made a lot when I first started doing it, and I still sometimes make it, but the best way to do that is you want to close off any outside light. So any windows, you can see this window behind me, I have a blind here. While it doesn't block, it's not a dark blind, so it's not blocking every single bit of light. It blocks most of it. And then over here on this big sliding door I have to my one side, I have a room darkening curtain that I can pull close to then control the light from this side. And that allows me to make sure that the lights staying the same throughout my entire live stream. For example, what will happen is I start streaming at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesdays, Thursdays, just FYI. And when I start streaming, it's still daylight bright outside. By the time my live stream finishes, it's gotten dark outside. So if I don't have something there blocking it, and then I don't have my key-in program set to the light that's constant, what happens is over time as it gets darker outside, the light in here changes, even though I still have these lights on, which messes up the green screen effect. So those are really the most important things you need to watch out for. That your green screen is super tight so that there's no wrinkles or creases in it. That you have plenty of ample lighting that you're controlling, meaning you're blocking off any windows, doors, anything else letting light in. All right, with all that out of the way, what we're going to do now is jump into the computer and actually jump into OBS Studio, and I'm going to show you guys the green screen pulled behind me, how to key it, and also show you the differences with the lights and the differences they make. For it, I will be using the Logitech C920 webcam, as that's the webcam most of you guys use, most starting streamers use out and stuff. I will say if you go to a professional camera like the one my wife's using to record me there, or one like this Canon DSLR, you will get better results when it comes to keying out a green screen. They just do a better job. However, with this setup, I get pretty damn good results out of this, and most people are pretty impressed with the quality of my green screen when they come to the stream. It's something that's mentioned quite often, and numerous people ask me how I have it set up so nice and clean. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the computer, and I'll show you guys all that.
All right, guys, so here we are on the computer. Right now, you're just seeing the video from the webcam. I'll show you guys the desktop here in a second and OBS and show you guys exactly what it is that we're going to do to adjust this so that the green screen disappears. But first, I once again just wanted to show you now a little bit with an actual example what I was talking about with the green screen and stuff. So green screen behind me, as you can see here in the corner, you have some ripples and stuff on the green screen, as well as in this corner right here, we have some ripples and stuff. And that's because, again, I am using my green screen hung across a wire, a steel cable from each side of my room. Again, if you want to get this as perfect as possible, using that I don't even know what it's called, but the stands with the pole that goes across that you can mount it to, and then stretch it along those side poles and clamp it so that you get rid of all these wrinkles, will definitely help you out. But what I've found is, honestly, as long as you do everything almost to the best, when it comes to lighting, the green screen, everything, you'll get a pretty decent result. So don't, go overboard trying to kill yourself if you can't get everything quite perfect. I'll also say that in my own personal experience, the biggest thing is definitely lighting. Okay, so I want to give you guys a couple examples. So right now on the screen, I have both side lights on, both of the lights with the soft boxes that I showed you shining on me from each direction, as well as the ceiling light above me shining down onto the green screen. I just want to show you guys what it looks like if I turn off all those lights and then, turn them on and off by default. Again, I think the biggest change, you pretty much need at least two lights, which are the two soft boxes that you guys saw at the beginning. However, I want to show you what happens if you get rid of the ceiling light I'm using, which acts as that backlight, because that also does help as well. All right, so right now all three lights are on. So let's go ahead and snap the fingers, and now you can see just how much light I lost just from that ceiling light. So that ceiling light really does help me separate myself from the background and give me that nice kind of, hair light is another term they use for it. Gives me that shine off the top back of my head, fills in the rest of the green screen. Again, you can see with just these two lights, I'm still not getting a shadow behind me because of the way I have them oriented and stuff. So it still works pretty well, and you would still be able to do it with this, but a backlight definitely does help. The problem obviously is if you try to do this with one light. So let's go ahead and snap the fingers again. You'll notice that then we have a lot of shadow over in this area because the light is hitting me on the side and it's lighting up this side pretty decently. It's nothing too bad. We'd probably be able to green this out. However, it's definitely casting shadow from me over here because the light's only hitting this side of me and not continuing on to the screen there. So in my opinion, if you want a really good green screen effect, you definitely need 2 lights. And if you want a great green screen effect, you definitely need that backlight as well. But again, if you position your green screen correctly and are willing to change the bulbs in your light fixtures to daylight as well as pretty high brightness, then you should be good and really only need 2 additional lights outside of a light you should already have on your ceiling. All right, so let me go ahead and snap the fingers one last time, and we got all the lights back on now. All right, so now that we have that set up, the next biggest thing that a lot of people adding a green screen inside OBS make a mistake with, and at this point, I'm going to go ahead and bring down the size of my webcam here so that you can see my background. It is going to make it a little weird because we have OBS running. So I'm going to try to bring it down maybe something like that. That way you don't get that warp. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but you get that warp effect of the desktop in the OBS. It's like one of those infinite mirrors. All right. So with that done, the first thing we want to do is here on your C920, again, I'm using the webcam because that's what most people use. If you're using a camera, you might be using a cam link as you can see listed here. Or if you're using the software from your camera manufacturer, could be using that. Whatever the case may be, we're going to right click on our webcam and we're going to go to properties first. Most people want to add in the filter, which then allows them to add in the green screen. But first, we want to change all of our settings for our camera, for either our webcam or our cameras, to manual settings. We don't want to be running anything in auto mode. Again, the biggest problem with green screens is when things change, whether that's lighting, again, from windows or doors and as it changes outside, also versus auto exposure on cameras, white balances, anything like that that's going to change the way the camera sees light is going to mess up a green screen effect. So once we open this up, then we're going to go ahead and click on Configure Video. When we do that, you're going to get a properties box, and most of the time with the Logitech C920, you're going to have white balance checked here as auto. You might also have this gain checked as auto, and then you're going to have some stuff over here under camera control set to auto. So the best settings I've found is number 1, uncheck everything that is auto. You want literally nothing to be auto. The biggest things that make the difference, almost everything you can leave default except for your white balance. You're going to want to adjust this for daylight saving bulbs, typically whatever style light you're using. So daylight falls in about 5500K. So you'll want to set your white balance to that. Unfortunately, even though you get bulbs and stuff that say 5500K, a lot of times, especially if they're cheap bulbs, which is fine, they're not going to be quite that. However, they'll still be close. So you're going to have to fiddle around with this white balance a little bit to get where you like. So for me, for example, and it's hard, moving this with the mouse, but once you click on one of these, you can also adjust it with the arrow keys on your keyboard by one number to get that exact match. So for me, and with the lights I have, even though they're rated at 5500K, what I feel matches best, and also artistically what I like best, falls around 4500. So that's what I have. Your gain, I personally like turning my gain down as far as possible, as the less gain you're using, the better quality you're going to get out of the webcam. So gain, I always leave at 0. White balance, 4500 for me. Those are the only 2 you need to change on Video Proc amp. Again, these might look a little bit different for you depending on the software and stuff you have on your computer, but basically you need to manually set the white balance and you need to make sure your gain set as low as possible. That way you're getting the best quality image out of your Logitech C920. If you're using a normal camera, you may not have a gain option, which is fine. And you might have to change these settings on your actual camera. So instead of doing it here in software, on your actual DSLR or mirrorless camera, you would set the white balance and everything customly and not use auto settings. Same with ISO, aperture, shutter speed, all of that. Okay, moving on. So camera control side, again, we want to uncheck everything. Zoom, that's totally up to you whether you want to zoom in or not. I like having as much room One thing people forget with a green screen is you want to have as much room as possible when you're moving around, so that if you throw your arms and stuff up in the air, they don't get cut off per se. As you can see, mine do, but I don't move around too much, and unfortunately, that's just, where I'm at and what I got right now. That's one of the benefits to a small room is the closer the green screen is to you, obviously, the closer everything is together, the less room you have to get out of those boxes. Ideally, it would be nice to set up your webcam so that you have enough room to reach out side to side and straight up and down and still be within the frame the entire time and still be covered by a green screen behind you the entire time. I don't have that privilege right now. So, I got it as best as I can. All right. So, zoom's entirely up to you. For me, I leave it zoomed all the way out. All right. So, next we have focus. Personally, I like just having everything as sharp as possible. If I adjust this focus from 0, you'll notice as I start turning it up, first the background starts to get just a touch blurry. And as I go up more, I get more and more blurry. With something like a cheap webcam like the Logitech C920 and having such a small sensor, everything is going to get blurry real fast. So I find just leaving this set so that everything's as sharp as it can be, it works best. So I leave it at 0. Exposure is where you'll have to mess around a little bit with your stuff. So for example, again, this should be checked auto by default. We'll uncheck it. This is actually the exposure of the camera. So let's say you have everything lit up really well. And let's say that your image is still kind of dark like this, at -6. So we might have to increase that to -5 or maybe even, -4, depending on your lighting situation. You want to find what gets you close enough in there. You can adjust brightness and stuff a little more with some filters and stuff when we add the actual filter on for the green screen, but this just basically you want to get it as close as possible to ideal lighting of what looks best on the screen to get you started. So again, for me, that's -5 with the lighting I have set up. If I was to get rid of the backlight, for example, I might need to increase this up to the -4, but right now at the -4, that's not going to give me what I want. Low light compensation, I also uncheck this because what that does is in low light, the camera will brighten everything again automatically, and I just don't want it to change anything on its own with lighting. I'm using light. I should have everything set myself correctly, which, yes, it takes more work. Yes, it's going to take you a little bit to dial everything in, but then once you have everything set, you should be good to go. So once those settings are set there, then we're going to go ahead and apply. I already had these settings set, so there's nothing for me to apply. So I'm going to hit OK, and we're back to this screen. So we can also click OK down here and close back down to our main OBS. And now what we're going to do is actually add on the green screen filter. So we're going to right click on this and go to our filters, and you have audio video filters at the top and effect filters. This is an effect filter, so we're going to click the plus sign right down here, and we're going to look for chroma key, which is right here. So we're going to click on that. You can name it whatever you want. You can call it green screen. I just leave it as chroma key. We're going to hit OK. Boom, we're going to hit the button. There we go. We are now green screened. So, but as you can see, and let me go ahead and bring this out a little more to make me a little bigger here. You can notice right away, as I make this a little bigger, we got a couple little issues. So, the first is we got some noise happening where it's not quite getting the green screen out. The second is we got a green halo around our body. You can see it kind of going around my head, especially here. Around my mic down here. And you can also see, as I mentioned, because I don't personally have the green screen entirely taut like I recommended at the beginning, you can actually still see some of the wrinkles and stuff, even in this corner a little bit. So that's where we now have these settings for the green screen that we're going to mess with. So there's basically 3 settings that you need to worry about with the green screen: similarity, smoothness, and key color spill reduction. All right. So similarity is how close does the green need to match for it to be keyed out. So the program is looking for one color, one green color. What this similarity bar then does is it goes from that one green point and kind of spreads out to cover greens that are close to that green point. The lower we have it, the more green's going to introduce, because as you can see, let me turn it off for a second. The colors are a little different. Here we have one color of green, but down here we have another color. So that's exactly what this is doing. Now again, the more taut you have it and the more evenly lit you have your green screen, the better it's going to be. Which is why in the beginning I said most of the time when you're doing green screens professionally, you're going to be using 4 lights. You're going to be using the 2 I have here, and then instead of a backlight, you're going to be using 2 additional soft boxes that are shining, that are next to me, shining directly onto the green screen, trying to even out the light across it as much as possible. And the reason for that is so that you get the same color green all the way across the board. In our case, we don't have that, so what we can do is use this similarity and turn it up until we get to a point where the green disappears. So I would say you want to make sure it's really good. You notice down in this, sorry, it's backwards for me. Down in this corner, I still have a little bit more of the green screen showing, so you really want to look for it and watch for it. So I'm going to keep going, and I think we're going to stop at 430. Now the problem with this is if you try to do, and this is why lighting's important. If you try to, if you don't have a lot of good lighting and you try to just, fix it with this similarity, as you keep going up, what eventually happens is you'll notice here, my mic's starting to get fuzzy. It's wanting to start key out other stuff. And as we continue to go, you see my face and everything goes. Then you see last, my shirt's going because my shirt is more of a color away from that. So you got to be careful about going too high. That's also the problem where I said you want to make sure you block off windows and doors and any other external light source that you're not controlling, because as the sun sets and stuff and the lighting changes, what'll happen is you might start off with your settings like this. Everything looks nice and great. And by the end of the night, you're looking like this on your live stream. All right. So you want to basically dial this in to where you start getting everything away. Again, for me, that looks about 430 is where I'm happy with. That brings us to our second one, smoothness. Smoothness is just trying to smooth out all the edges. So you see, again, down here, like in my mic stand where I have these ridges and stuff, you can see it's a little muddy there. In the back of my chair, if I move in the headset here, you can see it's a little bit. So that's what this smoothness does. If I turn it all the way down, you see it's not smoothing out the image at all, so everything, is crystal sharp, but you can also see all the noise. If I start to turn this up, you'll notice there, you can still see the ripples. And again, I keep going up, I keep going up, I keep going up. We're back at around 80. But again, same thing. If you go too far, it starts taking the smoothing process too far, and it starts degrading the actual image you're trying to key. So it started with 80. I'm actually happy with that. Is it perfect yet? Absolutely not. Again, you can kind of see a little bit of stuff in here, but overall, it's not bad. And when I shrink this down onto a gameplay thing, it's going to look okay. And again, we're doing the best we can with not actual proper lighting of a green screen, with having the green screen closer than you normally would professionally. So they're, not having it as taut as we should have it. So there's some things we're working against. So again, if you want perfection, you really got to do a professional setup. That's why all of these individual things are so important. But in our case, we're going for the best we can get, but this still looks pretty damn good. All right. So key color spill reduction is our last one. And what that does is, again, you notice the green, and let me go down a little bit. You'll notice the green around my head and stuff. And it's actually not too bad here because I do have good lighting and stuff. But basically what this does is allows you to increase it to get rid of the green on the edges. So you'll notice here, especially right here in these webcam or mic stand, you'll notice some green from that fringe and stuff. As I increase that, it's changing that green out, and we'll get to a point where it pretty much smooths out enough so that I don't have as much green around my head. I don't have it around my shoulders and stuff, and things like that. So personally, I like it at about 100. I think that's where it was at by default. I don't actually know, don't remember, but that's where I like it, and it looks good to me. Now you could go one step further, and you could add an effect for color grading or color correction, where you can add some contrast and stuff. You do get basic controls right here in the key chroma key filter. So for example, personally, I go up to about a 0.10 contrast. I just like it separating those colors a little bit. And again, if your gamma wasn't perfect, this is a good spot to adjust your brightness if you need to. For me, I think it looks pretty good, so I'm going to leave it there. And gamma, we don't need to mess with. We can leave that at 0. And there you go. Now you are green screened out. So now if I make this full screen, you will still notice there's a little bit of a hiccup here. So we could go back into it and actually maybe even turn this up to about 430. Whoops. To about 435 maybe. Just to get that out. Still just a touch. But again, now once you move this down into your game screen, you'll notice it looks really good. It doesn't look bad. Even if you go to something like, let me switch to my just chatting page for you guys. You guys won't see my desktop anymore for a second. But if we're at the just chatting page, you can see it still looks really good, you know, and unless I go completely full screen with the webcam, you know, you don't notice some of that little artifact and stuff that you saw. Now, again, you are going to have to tweak those settings a little bit. Also, if you're using different light bulbs, like I'm using CFL light bulbs, they take anywhere from about 5 to probably about 15 minutes to fully warm up to where I'm getting the brightest light out of them. And if that's the case with you, you're going to have to wait till those fully warm up before you mess with the settings, or else you will have to mess with them again. And there you have it. That is how you set up a green screen in OBS, as well as some of the best practices and guidelines to follow when you're setting it up. All right, I hope this helped you guys out tremendously. I know this was a very long tutorial. I know I went into depth on a lot of stuff. However, if you want a professional looking green screen that looks really good on stream, it takes quite a bit of work to set up. It takes quite a bit of time to dial everything in just right, instead of, you know, as most streamers do, just have a lot of their stuff on auto, like their webcam and things like that. So there you go. I hope that helps. Again, if this video did help you out, please make sure to leave a thumbs up on the video. It helps me out tremendously. It helps my video get seen by other people looking for content like this. If you'd like to see other videos like this one related to live streaming, different tutorials, gaming, tips and tricks, you know, growing as a Twitch streamer, any of those different things, make sure you hit the red subscribe button below and ring the bell next to it to be notified when I post new videos. And until next time, peace out, everybody.